Fossil fuel pollution means UK heatwaves are 3 to 4 degrees Celsius hotter now than they should be. That's physics, not politics. Which means at places like Salisbury District Hospital, they're now seeing heat injuries unthinkable just a few years ago. Take Andy. A day at the beach with the grandchildren has gone horribly wrong.
Walked from the beach across the hot sand, across the hot tarmac, felt something wasn't quite right with my feet and looked like I'd trodden on somebody's plaster when it was actually burnt skin.
Staff then alerted us to 6 heat-related admissions. So far today, and it's around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 6 patients have been admitted to this accident and emergency unit. 2 right now being treated in the resuscitation room just down that corridor. And all this, don't forget, at a time of the year when the NHS should be experiencing something of a summer lull in the number of admissions. So how does this compare with the traditional winter crisis period?
It's worse.
It's worse?
It's definitely worse than the winter spike we had this year and the previous couple of years, excluding obviously the COVID period, but this is much worse, and we are seeing a higher severity of illness of patients than we would normally expect for this time of year, and certainly more presentations than we would get at winter at the moment.
Across England and Wales, 4 hospitals have now declared heat-related critical incidents. Services have been reduced, thousands of operations at risk.
People who have diabetes, thyroid disease, heart disease, they're seeing more strain on them with the dehydration that they see and the pressure the heat brings.
Research models released today suggest 2,700 excess heat deaths in England and Wales for the May and June heat waves.
We've seen massive impacts from just these 2 heat waves. There have been thousands of deaths estimated across Europe as well as across the UK. We've seen damage to infrastructure, we've seen disruption to schools, to hospitals, to people's lives. And the only way to stop this getting worse is to head towards net zero. Now, that's not a political target, that's a physical target. If we stop adding greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, we stop adding to the warming.
Across Western Europe, officials now say more than 20,000 people have been killed in the heat waves. At least 5,000 in Germany in June, 2,000 in France in the same month. Barcelona street workers now wear warning bracelets designed to sound an alarm if the body temperature is excessive. In France, an undertaker said he had to turn away 150 bodies over the course of just one weekend in June.
People are in a state of utter distress and panic. Imagine your father or your mother's body decomposing, and we are unable to take charge of it. We have no solution to offer them.
The human cost of being in Europe, the fastest warming continent. Back in Salisbury, the system already stressed by longer A&E waiting times, 8 hours on the day we filmed here. And all this in hospitals not designed for the effects of fossil fuel pollution. Yesterday's forward-thinking glass-panelled architecture is today's greenhouse. It's 31 Celsius outside. A key meeting area is unusable and abandoned.
And it's 32.7 degrees here, so this will be up to 38, 39 by the time of evening handover.
In the kitchens, they can't cook hot food anymore. Temperatures here have touched 50 Celsius, forcing staff to work an hour on, an hour off. And for that hour off, perhaps, an emergency cooling room, beanbags, fans, cold drinks. But there's growing evidence that the real health crisis may come after the heat waves, not during them.
Indirect complications, particularly in older folk, as they're getting hot, blood pressure dropping, falling over and causing more fractures and broken hips and the such like. And then a delayed wave, sort of a week down the line, impact on kidneys and salt levels, particularly in those on medication for heart failure, for example, which can cause significant illness. But sometimes a week after the heat wave has passed is when you see the real surge of illness.
Another day unfolds in a system already stressed, where the annual lull, the quiet period, simply no longer happens.
Alex Thompson, well, our weather presenter Liam Dutton is with me to take a look through the record-breaking heat waves and what's to come. Liam.
Well, Krish, the intensity and number of heat waves that the UK's had so far this year has been astounding. You can see here the first heat wave arrived in May, giving a record-breaking temperature for that month of 35.1. Hot on its heels, another followed in June. Again, a record-breaking high for that month of 37.7 Celsius. And what's really fascinating is that these records weren't just broken by fractions of a degree, but by more than 2 degrees. And then the third heat wave arrived last week. Hasn't broken any July records, but nevertheless, somewhere in the UK has recorded 30 Celsius or higher for 8 consecutive days.
Right, so how is climate change affecting the heat waves?
Well, in a nutshell, climate change is making heat waves more frequent, more intense and longer lasting, not just here in the UK and in Europe, but also globally. Now, Worldwide Weather Attribution did a study on June's extreme heat wave, and it found a number of things. It also found that the intensity of the heat wouldn't have happened without the effects of climate change. And it also took a look at how the same heat wave would have behaved in past cooler climates. And you can see here how the same heat wave happened in 2003. Daytime temperatures would have been 2 degrees cooler. Had it happened in 1976, it would have been 3.5 degrees cooler. So this just goes to show how rapidly our climate is warming.
Well, we're only at the beginning of July. What does the rest of the summer have to say?
Exactly. Well, at the moment, the longer trend for the UK and Europe shows that high pressure is likely to be more prevalent across the continent. And what that means is a higher chance of higher than average temperatures. And it does mean that the risk of heat waves is set to continue throughout the rest of summer. So we are not out of the woods just yet.
Thanks, Liam. Anushka.
Now, a large wildfire which began in Manchester has spread across part of the Peak District, while a major incident was declared in North Wales amid a rapidly spreading blaze. Meanwhile, parts of southern England, including London, have been declared an extreme wildfire risk. Around 19 fires are currently burning across England and Wales, as Andrew Misra reports.
In the Peak District, emergency services have had a mountain to climb, declaring the wildfire on Tintwistle Moor in Glossop a major incident. It first started nearly 3 weeks ago, an area the size of 350 football pitches already destroyed. Over the weekend, though, it spread rapidly.
The conditions are horrendous, they really are. As you can imagine, with the firefighter kit we have to wear, and also with the sheer heat and the dust, it's been extremely difficult to try and tackle the fires. They've been changing on a daily basis. On Friday it was a very, very different picture than it is today.
Is it frustrating that some of these fires seem entirely avoidable?
I cannot even tell you how frustrating it is.
A woman's been arrested on suspicion of arson after a large fire broke out at Dovestone Reservoir in Greater Manchester. Police confirmed they'd had reports about fireworks being let off in the area and are warning people to be very careful of dry vegetation, which can easily ignite. Well, from here you can see why it's so complicated to tackle a wildfire like this. Obviously, it's inaccessible, and then you've got the wind. Even in the time we've been here, we've seen how a slight change in wind direction has a big impact on how the flames are fanned. Throw into all of that, of course, the heat. And yet this is just one wildfire currently burning across the UK. In North Wales, a major incident has been stood down tonight, meaning dozens of residents who were evacuated from near Conway Mountain are safe to return home. Parts of Sussex, Hampshire and Dorset, meanwhile, are deemed to be at exceptional risk of wildfires, according to Natural England. In total, emergency services are now dealing with well over a dozen wildfires across England and Wales. And in the midst of a heat wave, experts are not only dubbing this a fire wave, but the most widespread the UK has ever seen.
The Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has called for stronger measures to tackle his country's wildfires after 13 people were killed in the most recent blaze. Mr Sanchez met some of the emergency teams who've managed to stabilise the fire, which has devastated a large area of southern Spain. The flames spread so rapidly, victims were trapped in their cars or on foot as they tried to flee. From Andalusia, our Foreign Affairs correspondent, Secunda Kamani, reports.
A charred landscape, blackened, covered in soot and ash. This wildfire has burnt an area the size of Cardiff and claimed the lives of 13 people desperately trying to escape it. Now, residents, many of them British expats, have begun returning to their homes.
Is that a rocket?
3 pensions.
Michael, Belinda and their dog Rocket come from Cornwall, but spend much of their time in a small village nearby.
There was smoke everywhere. You could see individual fires, and that was getting closer. We decided that was the point. We decided we packed a bag and left.
And you don't know what you're going back to?
No. We don't. We've no idea. No. Keeping fingers crossed.
The cause of this, Spain's deadliest fire, is still being determined. Heavy rains earlier this year meant there was more foliage on the hills here in the province of Almería. Then the hot weather dried it out, turning it into fuel, awaiting a spark. The fire is now firmly under control, but it's still not being extinguished.
Forest fires have always been part of the Spanish summer, but man-made climate change is turbocharging them, making fires like this one more frequent and more devastating.
Our wall at the building here, and that's completely untouched, and here we are like 3-4 feet away.
Wow.
Michael and Belinda have made it home. The house is still intact, but the flames came right up to their door.
How do you feel seeing it all?
Well, just trying to imagine what it would have been like, really. It's completely surrounded, black hills on every side, and you'd have, if you were here, it just would have been flames on every side. It'd been terrifying.
The frequency and ferocity of wildfires in Europe have been increasing alongside rising temperatures. This graph shows the average amount of land burnt over the past 20 years up until July. You can see this year and last year saw significantly above average levels of damage. Wildfires aren't the only example of the climate crisis in Spain. Also in Almería, Europe's only natural desert, complete with spaghetti western-style film sets. A combination of climate change and over-intensive agriculture means 3/4 of this country is at risk of desertification.
The climate is even warm every year.
Gabriel de Barrio, a leading expert, explains that doesn't mean transforming into a landscape like this, but becoming dangerously low on water.
We don't know how far, but in the horizon there is the scenario that water is completely depleted and crops are no longer available as a resource, at least in an industrial way as they are being now.
We make our way back to the scene of the wildfire. For many here, relief at returning is tempered by grief for those who were killed.
Something like this, does it make you think twice about being here?
It does a bit, yeah. And with the climate getting warmer, I just think there'll be more events like this.
The world around us is being transformed by climate change. It will take drastic action to ensure our future still resembles our past.
Well, of course, this tragedy doesn't solely revolve around climate change. There are also real questions about the response to this fire. We know that all those who were killed died trying to escape from the fire. Local officials have said that they didn't follow their guidance, but many residents have said that they received no warning. And even as the victims from this disaster are still being identified, it's important to remember we're not yet reached the peak of what's normally known as the fire season in Europe. And just today, outside of Paris in a forest, another wildfire has broken out.
Now, we're only days away from a new Prime Minister, Andy Burnham, tonight with 349 Labour MPs nominating him to be their leader. He has some big decisions to make on the climate, not least whether to make net zero champion Ed Miliband the new Chancellor. With me now is Camilla Bourne, who's Chief Executive of Electrify Britain and was advisor to COP26 President Alok Sharma, and the economist Michael Jacobs, who's a consultant on climate change and energy policy and was an advisor to Gordon Brown when he was Prime Minister. Thank you for joining me. Camilla, first with you. You know, when you were an advisor, climate was still a top priority for Conservatives. Kemi Badenoch now has ditched the net zero target. Reform want to go further. It's drill, baby, drill in the US. How worrying is this shift in politics?
I think what's interesting is that when you actually talk to people outside of Westminster, outside of these sort of seats of power, people really care about climate change. It's impossible not to care when you're in the middle of this kind of heat wave. So although there is some shifts, we do need to actually think about where people are, and doing something about climate change is really still the priority.
I mean, people care, but if you drill down into the polls, it suggests that an increasing number of people no longer think we should have that 2050 target.
I think the thing that people are a little bit concerned about is having things done to them. In my job, I go around the country talking to people who are electrifying and really starting to get the benefits of that. If that's cutting their bills, having a better heating experience or cooling experience. Right now, everyone wants a heat pump, they want to be cool, or driving a better electric car. People want those kind of changes. It seems quite remote, just building wind turbines. So I do think we need to do much more to think about how do we use energy, how do we pass on those benefits to people through climate action, rather than thinking about it as an academic, big top-down target.
And Michael, it's a massive moment, and there's a lot of pressure on Labour. Pressure, for example, to get drilling. In the face of that, do you think that Andy Burnham should make Ed Miliband his Chancellor? And if so, can Ed Miliband withstand the pressure?
I do think that, like many people, more because I think Ed Miliband is somebody who gets things done. You know, the net zero agenda, the climate change agenda, the energy affordability agenda, taking green levies off bills and putting them on general taxation, which has cut energy prices, are all things that Ed Miliband has done over the last couple of years since he's been Energy Secretary. And he's shown that he can make Whitehall work. And if the Treasury needs one thing above all else, it's somebody at the top, the Chancellor, who can make it work for the country. I think many people feel that it's been a bit too conservative.
Do you think he'll green light North Sea drilling?
I think that the decision that is immediately on the table is not the one that everybody thinks it is. So Labour went into the election with a manifesto promise not to issue new drilling licences. But the immediate issue that Ed Miliband has to make a decision about in his capacity as Energy and Climate Secretary on the two North Sea oil and gas fields, Rosebank and Jackdaw, is not about whether they should have new drilling licenses. They got those. It's about whether they should be consented to go into production. It wouldn't surprise me if Ed Miliband said no to those, because he is very committed to action on climate change. And we know that globally, we don't need more fossil fuels.
Okay.
But it wouldn't go against the manifesto promise if he did, even though many people no doubt will claim that. And there is, of course, pressure from unions and from employers up in the North Sea. So I'm not sure what he will do, but I don't think it would be a big reversal if he did approve those two things.
Let me just bring that back to Camilla. I mean, there is so much pressure to drill coming from the US here as well. How does that affect what, you know, people like yourself are trying to do?
I mean, frankly, I think it's a distraction. So, you know, we've seen the second price spike in a matter of years, in 4 years, because of interventions overseas that we have no control over. Ultimately, people do not want to be using the fuels and be dependent on the technologies that use those fuels. So no one wants to have to use petrol to fill up their car or diesel. No one wants to have to run their boiler on gas. If we can get off using
So the
those
Conservatives are
technologies,
wrong on this.
we have to use those technologies. I mean, it's an interesting thought experiment, right? If we think about it, we've heard Reform, for example, talk about the fact that they don't want net zero, but then we know that Richard Tice drives a Tesla and puts solar panels on his industrial buildings. This is about taking it away from that kind of choices and thinking, how do we use the better technologies and have a better experience with them?
Meanwhile, we've got a situation where, for example, the government is considering watering down the mandate on switching to electric vehicles. I mean, is the reality that we're not quite ready to go at the speed that was set out by yourselves in COP26?
Well, 97% of people who drive an electric vehicle wouldn't go back for it. It's just the better technology.
Although when you've got a very long journey, it still doesn't have the infrastructure of other countries in terms of getting your charging in en route.
Our charging is much, much better now. In the vast majority of journeys, you wouldn't have any problems. Plus, you always want to stop. If you've got kids, if you're older, there's always a million reasons why you want to stop on the journey. So I think that range anxiety is not really in play that much.
And Michael, on all of this, you obviously knew Ed Miliband pretty well, but you must have known Andy Burnham pretty well. He was in government at the same time. Does he care about the climate?
Yes, he does. And if you look at his record in Greater Manchester, like many mayors, Sadiq Khan in London and other city mayors, he's taken important action at the local city regional level. So I've no doubt about his commitment on climate change, and I don't think anybody living through what we're going through now, these heat waves, and seeing the reports that you've seen from around the world, could be not committed on action on climate change. I really don't think that's an issue with Andy Burnham at all.
Okay, thank you both very much for joining me. Now, the extended period of heat has also put a spotlight on how the country is set up to deal with extremely hot temperatures. Low-income and minority ethnic people in England are most at risk from dangerously hot homes. And the heat is also having an impact on schools too. Our health correspondent Aisha Tull reports on the challenges caused by Britain's struggling infrastructure and what needs to change.
This is just where we keep our clothing situation, air fryer, microwave, but
Air
again,
fryer,
yeah, and then our wardrobes, and then I've got a little bathroom here.
Alexandra Whelan moved into her temporary accommodation in Lambeth, South London last year with her 7-year-old daughter. It's a one-room studio. Her living room, bedroom, kitchen and bathroom are all in this space. At first she noticed the room was warmer than she was used to, but then she started monitoring it as it became unbearably hot.
How hot did it get in here? 36.1 to be precise, was the hottest that I've seen for myself. And that was just me in the room without my daughter. That was without cooking. That was with windows open, fans on.
What is it like in here when it's super hot? How's it feel?
It's excruciating. It's really uncomfortable. So it's to the point of you can't even sleep because of it. You toss and turn. For me, I can manage it. But for my daughter, she gets like really bad skin allergies. She's got eczema as it is. And we've also got other pest issues.
When you say pest issues, you mean rats, don't you?
Rats, bed bugs, cockroaches, the lot.
This is a council-owned post-war building. Alexandra's room only has one window.
One, that's it. Yeah.
Just this one here?
Yeah. Wide.
Opens...
That's the widest it opens.
That's the widest it opens?
Yeah.
And there are lots of buildings like this up and down the country, made for a temperate climate.
The more we experience these heat waves, the more we see that the country as a whole is just not prepared to operate throughout a heat wave. We're in emergency response.
Emma Howard-Boyd is chair of the Independent National Heat Risk Commission. She's come to meet us at this community centre in Bristol, which opened its doors during the previous heat wave.
We need to shift to a strategic whole of society response so that the country can keep running and operating through a heat wave.
Like they did here, they opened their doors to school children when there was a red weather warning, giving the community a safe space.
I mean, some of the families walking in, they just looked so tired because the heat was so intense in the night as well. So I think a lot of people weren't sleeping very well. And to come in and just to feel that wave of cool air over them. One lady said to me, I could almost cry.
The conversation around adaptation is growing, particularly in schools. More than 1,000 of them had to close in late June. In England, the government has earmarked $450 million in grants to upgrade them. The Independent Climate Change Committee recommended that all schools should have aircon within the next 25 years.
This building's not designed at all for this weather that we're having. So the huts are wooden, and they have very poor air conditioning, and it insulates the heat. And by the time you've got 30 children in here, it gets really very hot in here. So it's just a problem that we're encountering, and we really need to make schools, we need to future-proof them.
As you can see, it's 30.6 right now.
30.7.
Yeah.
And this is before midday. On the day we filmed, temperatures outside were cooler than they were inside. Lambeth Council told us,
"We're sorry for the conditions Miss Whelan and her child have experienced, and we understand how distressing this has been. To alleviate her discomfort, we've accepted her request for a temporary move."
They went on to say,
"As heat waves become more frequent in England, there needs to be a review of housing standards, including temporary accommodation, to keep residents safe and comfortable."
I would like to say to them to try and live here themselves, even for a week. I would love them to experience it firsthand for the fact that this is a lot of our realities.
The Landmark Climate Change Committee report out this year warned about the problems faced in this report. Homes and schools built for a cooler climate that no longer exists. Not a future problem, the impact is already here.
Well, I've been speaking to the former mayor of Paris, Anne Hidalgo, famous for improving air quality and cleaning up the Seine. And I began by asking her about the biggest lesson she learned when it comes to addressing climate change in a big city.
When I became mayor of Paris in 2014, I start with one topic. It was, for me, the main problem in Paris was the air pollution. And I wanted to fight against air pollution. And today we work, we transform the city, we build more than 1,000 miles of bicycle lanes, we plant trees, we clean the river. All this action give us the opportunity to have less pollution. What it is very important, because if you have pollution and heat waves, it's the cocktail is the cocktail very, very dangerous for all the people.
How do you think European cities with old buildings, very difficult to adapt, grey roofs that absorb the heat, can stop people dying of, from heat waves?
It's impossible to live in these very old houses. What we did the 12 past years was we have in Paris social housing for family with low incomes. And I built an investment plan for this social housing in Paris. And every year we transform 5,000 of this housing, social housing in the city.
How do you pay for it without loading it onto individual household bills?
It's not just a cost and money you give. We have to spend this money for that. And what is very interesting, because the scientists, the economists are very present in the debate with us and are helping us to maybe speak better about the problem and about the cost of this investment. We can also build a new approach, have a green jobs, have a new green growth in our economy. It's not just money you are spending like that, no.
Just finally, you must have come across Andy Burnham as a mayor when you were mayor of Paris. I mean, obviously there are political similarities now between Britain and France, in that the parties of the centre are trying to hold off the parties of the right. How do you think he will do at trying to reassert the centre-left?
Andy is a very good friend, and I think that Andy is one of this very interesting and very also enthusiastic politician. And I know that he was very involved also into the climate change policies, and he built coalition and consensus also in their own city.
Anne Hidalgo, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Joining me now is the head gardener here, Anthony Mason. Thank you. Now, you have transformed this garden to deal with the changing climate. Tell me what you've done.
Well, thank you very much. Well, firstly, all in here, several years ago we used to have an annual bedding scheme. And by annual bedding scheme, I mean we had about 20,000 geraniums in the summer, for example. In the springtime, we would have 20,000 pansies and tulips.
A traditional English garden?
A traditional English garden, yes.
So why this?
Well, part of the reason was sustainability. So overall, the amount of water that it takes, the plants to be grown every year, and not to mention the gardeners and our volunteers' backs were a little bit sore after planting 20,000 bedding plants.
20,000, I can imagine. And how much has it changed the amount of watering that you have to do here?
Absolutely. So in here now, this was planted last year, for example, all in little 9-centimetre pots, quite small. So to establish it last year, we had to water it quite a bit. But this year, in our second heat wave, we watered this twice so far.
Twice in the entire year?
Twice so far for this year.
For all of these plants. So tell me what type of plants we're talking about. I mean, this does not look like a traditional English garden, but it's got the wow factor.
Absolutely. So we have these sweeps of ornamental grasses behind us. We have Calamagrostis, which gives us spine. But just in front of us here, low down, we have oregano, which is very good. For pollinators, Stachys hamalo, which is about to go over.
These just take much less water.
Much less water,
and
absolutely.
There's loads of hosepipe bans probably coming. Would you advise people to actually put these in their gardens?
It's a great starting point, absolutely. So as I just mentioned, a few plants, and there's Nepeta in here we have. Behind us, we also have some fennel. Fennel is fantastic in dry weather. There's nice deep tap roots as well, and it requires very, very little water.
I mean, it is beautiful, but what does it mean for like the garden rose? Is that going to survive this changing climate?
Well, it's a very good point. The garden rose is one that could be under threat, but only if you have very light, free-draining soil. The really good thing you can do about rose gardens is just apply good horticultural principles. A really heavy mulch keeps the moisture in, which is key, really, to good roses.
But you would really advise a lot of this. And I have noticed there are a lot of bees, there are a lot of butterflies around. I mean, is that a part of what you're trying to do here, is to get more of that?
It was a part of the process, absolutely. And, you know, we all know we need pollinators to survive as humans. It is as simple as that. And that has been a real bonus. The bees, butterflies, moths, we've had a real boon in insects.
And you know, there's a big push not to mow your garden much. I noticed that your grass is quite parched here. I mean, would you advise people not to water their grass?
It would be my #1 thing. We do not water the grass here, and you don't need to. It's nice to have a green lawn. Everyone has it in spring, they have a nice green lawn. But in the summer, if it goes brown, let it go.
Brown is beautiful.
It would be much better if you direct your water into the plants where they need it, as and when needed, of course. 100%.
So don't worry about watering the grass. That is a good one.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Anthony Mason.